Jeff Fort and his Black Peastone Nation, the late 1960s was a time when amazing things could happen. Just look and listen.
But the Blackstone Rangers are no longer a tough street gang. They are an example of what can be accomplished by the young people who live in the ghetto areas of our big cities and supposedly have no opportunity to get ahead in life. These kids got off the street and formed a musical revue company called Opportunity Please Knock. And they've been performing now for almost a year. I'm sure you're going to enjoy what they do. Ladies and gentlemen, meet the Blackstone Rangers.
In fact, these weren't Blackstone Rangers at all. They were simply the people Jeff Fort sent to L.A. to sing on the Smothers Brothers show. Once again, he controlled the situation. The late 1960s, it was a time when civil rights activist Jesse Jackson would confer with Jeff Fort and Mickey Cogwell, leader of the Cobra Stones. It was a time in which Illinois Senator Charles Percy would invite Jeff Fort to Richard Nixon's inauguration, even though Fort had just been to Washington, where he refused to answer senators' questions about his misuse of $1 million federal grant and had walked out on them. Jeff Fort's invitation came even after he'd been convicted of contempt of Congress for that. Jeff Fort decided to send fellow gang leader Mickey Cogwell to the inauguration in his place. It was a time some people considered utterly insane. Chicago Police Superintendent Leroy Martin.
To go out here and find a hoodlum off the corner and invite him to the White House, you desecrate the White House. I think it's absolutely outrageous.
But was it outrageous, or was it an attempt to enfranchise the disenfranchised? There were people, after all, who saw Jeff Fort with a different perspective.
They were poor. They didn't have anything. They didn't run any candy stores or cleaning shops.
They wanted to be somebody?
And they wanted to run it. That was their term. They wanted to run it.
Oscar Brown Jr., singer, songwriter, playwright, was born in Woodlawn.
Nobody wants to be broken, poor, beating everybody up and scared to death all the time. That's what it was about. They were scared of people. They were scared of each other. They were scared of what was going on, and they were scared of the environment in general. And so they became tough. They became something that was going to fight back. They were getting something that was going to run it. That had its own turf and it had its own identity, stone thing.
Oscar Brown Jr.'s idea to stem the violence in Woodlawn was to create a musical revue starring the Blackstone Rangers, providing them with an alternative to the street. It was an idea that allowed Oscar Brown Jr. to look more closely at Jeff Fort.
He reminded me of a very good, charismatic Baptist preacher in his approach to these guys. Brothers, you know. Where did you get those hats? I mean, wear those for your chief. You know, he was like that. And he was an inspirational guy to him. I never got to see that in my general dealings with him because he's always usually pretty reticent. He was not a warm person in my relationship with him.
Jeff Fort wasn't a warm person in a lot of people's relationships. They would call him Angel on the street, and for many, he was clearly their leader. But his leadership was a function of fear. You were afraid of him when he was an 11-year-old kid?
Yes. He had a certain crazy look in his eye that would make you scared of him.
Some people are still afraid and speak from the shadows. Others are not. Again, former gang member Kenny Morrow.
The man is a vicious killer, a psychopathic killer.
Do you believe that Jeff ever participated in any of the killings?
Oh, yeah.
Police officer Richard Peck and gang member Kenny Morrow both clearly remember the day James Watusi McCain was killed in the apartment building that used to stand here at 42nd and Drexel.
When did it happen?
It happened on Christmas Day, 1968.
Jeff put him on his knees and made everyone walk by, and they kissed him on his forehead.
Kissed Watusi?
Kissed Watusi on the forehead.
Made him get down on his hands and knees and recited the 10 Commandments to him.
And the last man was Cornell Steele.
I heard he stuck the gun in his mouth.
And blew his brains out with the .45 pistol.
So it was the kiss of death?
It's a kiss of death, yes.
Officer Peck would have his own shootout with Jeff Fort's gang. It happened 4 months later, in April 1969, when a group of Blackstone Rangers lined Woodlawn Avenue.
And it was this building right here they were standing. And he looked at me and he says, Peck. And so then they started to shoot. And they were shooting at me underneath the car from the sidewalk there. And so when I got ready, they emptied their guns and they ran through that gangway.
How many times were you shot, officer?
15.
Well, it was a hit. The GIU was getting a little too tough on us.
The Gang Intelligence Unit.
Gang Intelligence Unit. And Jeff said we had to get rid of some of them. And Peck was one of the top ones.
Did that shooting intimidate Peck? Did it slow him down?
It made him worse.
Who do you have most of the trouble from? Is it white policemen or